I recall a Christmas night, many years ago, when I was a child. Snow was falling outside, and the scent of pine and cinnamon filled the house. My parents were busy in the kitchen, preparing the feast, and I was there, in my little nook, with an old book in my hands, imagining all the stories those pages held. Suddenly, I heard a noise at the door. It was the postman, delivering a last-minute present, something we'd forgotten to buy. In that instant, I felt immense relief, but also a pang of sadness, as I knew not everyone was fortunate enough to have their family together that night. And this memory, this feeling, always resurfaces when I think of loneliness, especially during festive times. That's why Mrs. Aurora's story touched me so deeply. She, at 90, was preparing for another solitary Christmas, which made me relive that childlike melancholy, but on an infinitely grander scale. I picture her in her home, surrounded by memories, yet devoid of the warm presence of loved ones, as the world outside celebrated in unity. Mrs. Aurora lived in an old house, the kind that tells stories just by looking at it. The walls, once vibrant, now seemed more muted, reflecting the solitude that accompanied her. Her white hair was like the snow that might have been falling outside, framing a face etched by times of joy and sorrow, but which now bore the weight of years without anyone to share the days with. Her eyes, once lively, held a profound melancholy, a longing that even the warmth of a fireplace seemed incapable of dispelling. Christmas was approaching, and with it, the anticipation of another silent night. There was no expectation of laughter, of children running through the house, nor the bustle of a family gathered for dinner. There was only the ticking of the clock in the living room, marking the passage of time without major events, and memories that, while precious, sometimes weighed more than they uplifted. Mrs. Aurora spent her days in a quiet routine, tending to her small garden, reading her old books, and watching the comings and goings on the street through the window. She knew the world carried on, but she felt increasingly detached from it, an island in a sea of people. The previous Christmas had been difficult, and she feared this one would be even worse, her loneliness intensifying with the passing years. She wasn't expecting anything different for this Christmas. Routine was her sanctuary, a way to keep her mind occupied and ward off darker thoughts. She prepared her meals calmly, selecting ingredients with care, even though she knew it would only be for herself. She tended to her plants with the same affection, talking to them as if they were old friends, the only ones who seemed to truly listen. The house was immaculate, as always, but there was a palpable stillness that weighed heavily. The silence was punctuated only by the house's own sounds, the creak of the floorboards, the murmur of water from the tap, the incessant ticking of the clock in the living room. These were familiar sounds, constant companions, yet, at this time of year, they seemed to echo her absence even more profoundly. On Christmas Eve, Donna Aurora sat at the table, a simple plate before her, and tried to recall other Christmases, filled with laughter and hugs, with cherished faces that now existed only in memory. It was a painful exercise, an attempt to relive the past in a present devoid of company. She didn't outwardly lament her situation, pride preventing it, but the sadness was evident in her eyes, in her slow, deliberate gestures. The anticipation of a solitary evening was a dark cloud hanging over her. Time passed slowly, and Christmas night arrived, cold and silent. Donna Aurora, in her favorite armchair, gazed out at the darkness, where the few lights from the neighboring houses seemed distant and cold. She had prepared a small cake, more to uphold tradition than out of appetite. The sweet aroma lingered in the air, a cruel contrast to the loneliness she felt. The television was on, broadcasting Christmas films, but the happy stories on screen only amplified her own melancholy. She sighed, feeling the weight of her 90 years, the absence of children, grandchildren, or anyone who could break the monotony of the night. She thought of her youth, of family gatherings, of Christmases abundant with feasting and joy. Now, only memories remained, coming and going like waves on a deserted shore. She felt like an old ship, run aground in a forgotten harbor, watching others sail towards new horizons. The hope for a Christmas miracle, for a surprise to break the routine, had long since faded. And then, at the zenith of her solitude, When silence seemed the sole occupant of the house, a sound shattered the quietude. A knock at the door. Faint, hesitant, yet unmistakable. Dona Aurora lifted her head, intrigued. Who could it be at this hour, on Christmas Eve, and knocking so timidly? Her home rarely received unexpected visitors, and the few occasions that did arise were by prior arrangement. A mixture of surprise and apprehension washed over her. Could it be a mistake? A neighbor in need of assistance? The knock repeated, a fraction stronger this time. Dona Aurora's heart began to beat faster, not from fear, but from an unaccustomed curiosity. She slowly rose from her armchair, feeling the weight of years in every movement, and made her way towards the door. What awaited her on the other side of the wood? The anticipation was palpable, a sensation she hadn't experienced in a long time. It was a sliver of hope, however tenuous, emerging from the darkness of that Christmas night. With measured steps, Dona Aurora traversed the room, each creak of the floorboards amplifying the suspense. She reached the door, paused for a beat, and brought her hand to the peephole. The sight that greeted her was startling. It wasn't a neighbor, nor a stranger with dubious intentions. It was a youthful figure, swathed in a thick coat, their hair slightly damp from the falling snow. The person appeared a little lost, but with a gentle smile gracing their lips, which brightened even more upon noticing someone had appeared. Dona Aurora didn't recognize the face immediately, but there was something familiar in the posture, in the way the person presented themselves. It was a blend of innocence and determination, traits she'd seen in young faces, but which here seemed to carry a special significance. Hesitation gave way to curiosity. Who could this person be, seeking her out on this night? She unlatched the door, and the night's chill invaded the house for a fleeting moment. The figure on the other side was a young woman, perhaps in her early 20s. Her eyes, a deep brown hue, met Dona Aurora's, and a radiant smile bloomed on her face. "Good evening, ma'am," said the young woman, her voice soft yet clear. "I'm terribly sorry to bother you on a night like this. I'm Clara. I was looking for someone." Dona Aurora regarded her, not entirely comprehending. Clara. The name meant nothing, but the gaze. There was something in that gaze. A sweetness, a sincerity that disarmed. Dona Aurora felt a slight tremor in her hands. "Looking for someone," she repeated, her voice catching with surprise and an unexpected emotion. "Yes," replied Clara, taking a step forward, as if to draw closer. "I'm looking for Dona Aurora. I'm your granddaughter." Dona Aurora's world seemed to grind to a halt. Granddaughter. She didn't have any grandchildren. Or rather, she did, but they were distant, out of contact for years, lost in their own lives. The possibility, however remote, struck her like lightning. Clara's eyes seemed to carry the same longing that Dona Aurora felt, but mingled with a contagious hope. "My granddaughter." Dona Aurora managed to utter, disbelief coloring her words. Clara nodded, her eyes shining with expectation. "Yes, your son Joao's daughter. I'm Clara, his daughter. My father always spoke so highly of you. He passed away a few months ago, and before he did, he asked me to find you. He wanted me to bring you a letter." The information hit her squarely. Joao, her son, the one she hadn't seen in over 20 years. The initial shock gave way to an avalanche of emotions. Tears began to stream down Dona Aurora's face, tears of sorrow for the loss of her son, but also of overwhelming relief. Clara, seeing the tears, took a cautious step forward. I'm so sorry for your loss," she said, her voice thick. Dona Aurora could barely speak. She extended a trembling hand, and Clara held it firmly, a gesture of comfort and immediate connection. In that moment, time seemed to cease. Years of solitude dissolved like mist in the sun. The knock at the door, which she'd thought insignificant, was in fact the harbinger of a reunion that would change everything. It was the Christmas miracle she no longer dared to hope for, arriving in the form of a young stranger, but with her family's blood running through her veins. Clara entered the house, and the atmosphere, previously silent and melancholic, took on a new lease on life. The young woman brought with her a contagious energy, a breath of youth that dispelled the coldness of that Christmas. She observed everything with curiosity and admiration: the antique furniture, the black and white photographs on the walls, every detail telling the story of a life. Donor Aurora, still moved, watched her with a mixture of awe and tenderness. It was hard to believe that this young woman was truly her granddaughter, the daughter of her beloved Joao, whom she thought she had lost forever. Clara approached one photo in particular, where a young couple smiled at the camera. "That's you and Granddad, isn't it?" she asked, with a slight tone of reverence. Donor Aurora nodded, tears returning to her eyes. "Yes, dear. That was me and your grandfather." Clara smiled, a smile that seemed to bring the sun into the house. The young woman then turned to Donor Aurora, a letter clutched in her hands. "My father told me you kept this letter. He asked me to deliver it to you personally. He said it was important." Donor Aurora took the letter, her hands still trembling. The envelope was yellowed with age, and the name Aurora was written in a script she instantly recognized as Joao's. It was his final communication with her, one he had prepared before his departure, confident that his granddaughter would one day deliver it. As she opened the letter, Donor Aurora felt the weight of years of silence and regret begin to dissipate. Joao's words, reaching out from beyond, brought immeasurable comfort, sealing a bond that not even death could sever. Joao's letter was an ode to a mother and daughter's love, a testament to his own struggles and longing. He spoke of how life had taken him far away, but that he had never forgotten her. He asked for forgiveness for all his absences, for not having had the courage to reconnect. He described Clara with affection, the joy she brought into his life, and his wish for her to know her grandmother. Donor Aurora read on, each word a balm to her wounded soul. She felt as though Joao were present, beside her, speaking with her, sharing his final thoughts. The tears that now flowed were of gratitude, of a love that transcended time and distance. Clara hugged her, sharing in the moment of profound emotion, their tears mingling. That night, Donor Aurora's home was filled with a genuine joy, an unexpected celebration that no one, least of all her, could have foreseen. The small cake was forgotten in favor of an impromptu dinner, with Clara recounting stories of her father, and Donor Aurora sharing memories of a childhood that now seemed more vivid than ever. Laughter echoed through the rooms, dispelling the shadows of solitude. It was a different Christmas, a Christmas of reunion, of second chances, and of love reborn from the ashes. The knock at the door was not just the end of a lonely night, but the beginning of a new chapter, brimming with hope and the promise of a reunited family, albeit in an unexpected fashion. That Christmas, which began with the melancholy of solitude, ended with the most beautiful celebration Donor Aurora could have ever imagined. And that's precisely why my gaze lingers on every detail, every escaping sigh, every suppressed tear. I'm no mere observer, but rather an intrinsic participant in every emotion that danced within that space. I feel the warmth of the embrace that shattered barriers, the tremor in hands seeking solace, the rekindled light in weary eyes. I am the living memory of a time when hope felt fragile, a tenuous thread that nearly snapped, but which, with a breath of affection, strengthened, weaving a new tapestry of existence. Every shared smile, every whispered word, all of it resonates within me, a persistent echo reminding me of love's transformative power. My particularity lies in the capacity to feel the dust of time settle upon experiences, yet without ever extinguishing the brilliance of souls. I see not only what has transpired, but also what is yet to unfold, the silent promises hanging in the air like the petals of blossoming flowers. I sense the vulnerability revealed in every sincere confession, the courage born from the need to be loved. And in this profound feeling, I find the reason why each moment becomes a treasure, tangible proof that even in the darkest of times, the human heart is capable of finding the most radiant light. I am no mere spectator in this unfolding narrative. The timelines intertwine so deeply that I feel an intrinsic part of every twist, every tear, and every smile. I witnessed the blossoming of hope in the eyes of a young woman who barely knew the world's weight, yet carried the strength of 1,000 seas within her soul. I was an eyewitness to silent sacrifices, to those almost imperceptible gestures that nevertheless shaped the destinies of generations. My hands, calloused by time and by the many stories I've helped to record, tremble when recalling moments when fear threatened to engulf reason, but kindness, ever resilient, always found a way. My perspective is forged in the ashes of countless battles, both internal and external. Every word I utter, every detail I endeavor to describe, carries the weight of my own journey. I recall feeling the same chill down my spine that the main characters felt when confronted with the unknown, having shared the anguish of waiting and the ephemeral joy of achievement. The connection is visceral, a profound echo resonating through every fiber of my being. I was not merely a listener. I was an unwitting confidant, a keeper of secrets that would have been lost to oblivion had they not been woven into this narrative. I saw love ignite in improbable circumstances, blooming like a stubborn flower pushing through asphalt. I felt the pain of loss as if it were my own, the bitterness of regret corroding the soul like slow-acting acid. It is this shared experience that impels me to tell, to rescue from time the fragments of humanity that define who we are. Consequently, when I speak of courage, it's no abstract notion for me. It's the visage of someone who, despite a shattered heart, rose to protect those they cherished. When I mention hope, I distinctly perceive the spark ignited amidst the darkness, the unshakable faith in a brighter future, even when all signs pointed to the contrary. Each event chronicled herein is a fragment of my being, a tangible recollection reminding me of the beauty and fragility of the human condition. And it is this tapestry of emotions and experiences that propels me forward, urging me to seek the truth behind every smile and every distant gaze. Not merely as a chronicler, but as one who has lived, felt, and learned from each moment I now share. The narrative still holds myriad chapters yet to unfold, and my involvement is irrefutable, a golden thread intricately woven into the complex fabric of life. The changes. They arrived in waves, sometimes gentle, other times like tsunamis that swept all before them. I recall the scent of dust on the packed earth roads, an almost nostalgic aroma now, juxtaposed with the acrid smell of car exhaust that began to appear, soiling a sky that was once a pure, unadulterated blue. Music underwent a dramatic metamorphosis. The rhythm of the viola and pandero gave way to electric guitars and the pulsating electronic beat that blared from increasingly louder radios. I sensed the apprehension in the air as news reports began to articulate what had previously been whispered in dark alleyways: freedom of expression, rights that no one dared to demand. I observed the youth with their long hair, their vibrant attire, an audacity in their gaze that surprised me and, I confess, frightened me a little. It was as if the old fences, those that kept us tethered to a single place, were collapsing, and no one knew precisely where to flee. The gatherings in the town square, once filled with chatter about the harvest and neighbors, took on a different tenor. I heard the words democracy, election, vote. They seemed distant, abstract concepts, yet I felt hope pulsing in the younger voices, frustration in the older ones. I witnessed friends who were always placid engaging in heated discussions, political passions igniting a fire that had never existed before. I remember one day in particular, the harsh sun beating down on the asphalt, when I saw a group of people gathered, holding placards. The words scrawled upon them, in trembling yet resolute letters, spoke of justice, of the absence of fear. A shiver traced its way down my spine, a blend of trepidation and admiration for the courage of those who dared to raise their voices. It was a medley of colors, sounds, and nascent sentiments intertwining, forming a human mosaic in perpetual transformation. Fashion, then, became a spectacle in its own right. Women, previously confined to long, demure dresses, began to don trousers, shorter skirts, a style that challenged the modesty of many. I recall the hushed gossip, the disapproving glances mingled with looks of admiration. The fabric of clothing changed. Plain cotton gave way to synthetic materials, boasting more vibrant colors and a sheen that seemed to reflect the very novelty sweeping the globe. I, in my more understated attire, felt somewhat out of place, a relic of a fading era. Yet, concurrently, There was a latent curiosity, a silent yearning to comprehend this new freedom manifesting in shapes, colors, and gestures. It was life reinventing itself, painting the world with bolder, more vivid brushstrokes. That period of transition, unfolding before my very eyes, was a symphony of contrasts. On one hand, I felt the weight of tradition, the comforting familiarity of established ways of life. The conversations around the table, the customs of yesteryear, all of it was a safe harbor amidst the tempest of change. But on the other hand, there was the irresistible force of the new, an impetus pulling me beyond known boundaries. I observed, with a blend of awe and fascination, the emerging youth, their expressive faces, their gazes unsatisfied with ready-made answers. They sought something more, an authenticity that I, in my own youth, had also pursued, albeit by different means. I remember one specific day, in a town square where the sun seemed to shine with greater intensity. A group of young people had gathered around a guitar, singing with infectious passion. The lyrics spoke of hope, of freedom, of a future they themselves would build. I felt a pang in my chest, a mix of nostalgia and admiration. Nostalgia for the fervor of my own youth, for the unwavering belief in a better world, and admiration for their daring, for the way they expressed their feelings without fear of judgment. It felt as if spring itself had decided to manifest there, amidst that throng of dreams and voices. That moment, trivial for many, was a turning point for me. I realized that life wasn't a river always flowing in the same direction, but rather a vast, mutable ocean, with tides that constantly reshaped the landscape. My subdued clothes, which had once seemed a shield against ephemerality, now revealed themselves as somewhat limiting. That silent desire to grasp the new freedom intensified, transforming into a need to reconnect with the vibrancy of the present. It wasn't about abandoning the past, but about allowing it to converse with the now, crafting a richer, more colorful tapestry. Witnessing this social effervescence taught me that progress isn't solely measured by technological advancements or political shifts, but also by people's capacity for self-expression, reinvention, and the ability to find joy in the minutiae of life. The hum of conversations, the unburdened laughter, the way they shared their experiences, all of it transmitted a vital energy. I began to feel that my own reactions were no longer those of a passive observer, but of someone gradually allowing themselves to be touched by this wave of renewal. A sense of belonging, however subtle, started to blossom. That human warmth, once a distant melody, became the core of my existence. That hum, which I had previously only overheard, transformed into the soundtrack that accompanied my days. I vividly recall the first time I, without hesitation, shared a simple memory, a story I'd harbored for years, which had never before found the opportune moment or receptive ear to emerge. The reception was warm, a blend of genuine attentiveness and empathy, bestowing upon me an unexpected lightness. The reverberation of this openness was profound for me. The veil of reserve that had cloaked me began to unravel, revealing a more authentic, more vulnerable, yet paradoxically stronger, self. The discussions about the past, about lost loves, celebrated triumphs, and battles fought, were not mere anecdotes, but rather mirrors reflecting my own emotions and my yet unfulfilled longings. I saw in every receiving gaze an invitation to shed my fears, to embrace imperfection, and to find beauty in flaws. For those around me, the change did not go unnoticed. My nephew, for instance, who had always perceived me as a somewhat detached figure, began seeking my company more frequently. Our outings grew longer, our conversations deeper. He would share his uncertainties about the future, his nascent romantic dilemmas, and I, in turn, offered not ready-made advice, but the attentive listening of someone who had traversed similar paths, with their own stumbles and successes. That bond, once tenuous, strengthened in a surprising manner, forging a new channel of affection and understanding between us. However, the real turning point arrived with how the community began to perceive me and, more importantly, how I started to see myself within it. The fear of being a burden, a weight on others, was gradually supplanted by a sense of usefulness and purpose. I realized that my experiences, however modest, could serve as a bridge, an inspiration, a source of comfort. I began to offer my assistance with small tasks, to share my culinary skills, to simply be present to listen to anyone who needed it. This exchange, this network of mutual support, transformed routine into a mosaic of meaningful moments, where every contribution, no matter how minor, acquired a special significance. The most valuable lesson I gleaned from it all was the rediscovery of my own capacity for connection. I learned that old age is not an end, but rather a new chapter, brimming with potential for growth and for forging authentic bonds. I discovered that aging, when accompanied by openness and receptivity, can be a pathway to a richer, more fulfilling life, where love and belonging become the true cornerstones. My life and the lives of those around me were, indeed, turned upside down, but in a way that allowed me to rediscover a profound and lasting sense of purpose. The air in the room grew heavy, dense with the expectation that hung between us. I observed Clara's countenance, the way her eyes, once vibrant, now carried the weight of unspoken years. There was a fragility there I had never noticed before, a vulnerability that struck me unexpectedly. For a moment, the outside world, the rumble of cars on the street, the insistent tick-tock of the clock on the wall, seemed to vanish. It was as if time had decided to take a pause, allowing only the truth to emerge, raw and powerful. I felt a pang of anxiety, a trepidation that the image I had constructed of Clara, the strong and unshakable matriarch, might crumble. But mingled with this was an undercurrent of curiosity, a sincere desire to understand what had made her so reserved at certain times, what she concealed behind that often merely superficial serenity. It was her whisper that shattered the enchantment. "You know, my dear, not all of life is made of festivities and joys. There were times when silence was my sole companion." Her voice, thick with a melancholy that was far from recent, resonated within me. I gazed at her hands, the fine wrinkles recounting tales I could scarcely imagine. Her subsequent words weren't spoken with lament, but with a placid, almost resigned acceptance. She began to recount, with interjections and pauses for breath, a youthful love, one that had blossomed during trying times and been abruptly curtailed by circumstances beyond her control. It wasn't a fairy tale romance, but a genuine one, replete with shared understanding and future plans that never materialized. A peculiar sensation washed over me. It wasn't pity, but a profound sense of empathy. I saw the young Clara within that aged figure, reliving the anguish of loss, the imposed solitude. I felt an almost irrepressible urge to reach out, to touch her face and utter reassurances that everything would be all right, as if I could, by some magical means, erase the imprints left by time and disillusionment. Yet, I knew it would be futile. The wound, though ancient, was an intrinsic part of her. My strongest reaction was one of powerlessness, followed by a surge of admiration for the fortitude she displayed in sharing these recollections, in unearthing a painful chapter of her existence. I realized that love, in its myriad manifestations and losses, had shaped who she was, but had not entirely defined her. The revelation prompted me to reconsider the family dynamic, the perceived absences, the silences I had previously ascribed to disinterest. The truth was more intricate and, in a way, more human. Clara was not merely the grandmother I knew. She was a woman with a past rich in experience, imbued with profound joys and sorrows that contributed to the wisdom I was now witnessing. This moment was not a defeat, but an illumination. The veil of mystery that had shrouded her dissipated, replaced by a deeper understanding and an even more genuine affection, now tinged with admiration for her resilience and the beauty of her journey. The house, once merely a physical space, transformed into a repository of memories and emotions, a dwelling where past and present intertwined in a meaningful fashion. That instant, far from being a full stop, marked the genesis of a new era in my perception. The truth, upon its eventual unveiling, didn't bring the acrid weight of disillusionment, but rather the buoyancy of an understanding that transcends surface appearances. The lines etched upon their face, once dismissed as mere tokens of time, now narrated tales of silent battles and hard-won victories. Each scar upon their soul, which I had presumed to be flaws, I came to recognize as testaments to their unyielding fortitude. The house, formerly a mere shelter, transformed into a sanctuary, where the echoes of their experiences resonated with poignant clarity, reconfiguring my own inner landscape. The wisdom that emerged from that revelation was profound and transformative. I grasped that life is not a linear progression, but an intricate tapestry of moments, some radiant, others shadowed, all indispensable to the complete narrative. Adversities are not impediments to be dreaded, but rather the very crucibles of character, the catalysts for growth. I saw in their journey, in their choices, in their sacrifices, a reflection of the human condition itself, with its inherent fragility and its immense capacity for resilience. This comprehension, rather than distancing me, drew me closer in a manner I could never have conceived, awakening within me a reverence that mirrored the admiration I hold for ancient trees that withstand the ravages of time, their roots delving deep and their trunks bearing the indelible marks of countless storms. My worldview, previously colored by an optimism that was at times rather naive, was now imbued with a realist hope. I believe that beauty lies not in pristine perfection, but in raw authenticity, in the courage to embrace vulnerability, and in the resilience that arises phoenix-like from the ashes. I learned that true love does not blind, but illuminates, and that genuine admiration stems from the recognition of the inherent complexity and intrinsic beauty of each being. The unfolding of events taught me to cherish the journey as much as the destination, to seek learning in every stride, and to cultivate empathy as the most precious of tools for navigating the often turbulent waters of existence. The house, now, was not merely a place of refuge, but a portal to a universe of meanings, a perpetual reminder that the past, with all its sorrows and joys, forms the bedrock of the present and serves as the chart for the future. Reflecting on the historical significance of events and the lessons gleaned from them is akin to diving into an ocean of wisdom that life itself has afforded me. Each turn of fortune, each overcome challenge, each moment of contemplative serenity has sculpted my perception of the world and the people who inhabit it. I've realized that history isn't solely forged by grand achievements and celebrated figures, but also by the small gestures, the individual choices that, when aggregated, weave the intricate fabric of reality. Time, that relentless master, teaches that patience is a virtue which flourishes amidst adversity, and that resilience isn't the absence of stumbles, but the capacity to rise as many times as is necessary. The wisdom garnered through experience is like a river that, over its course, accumulates sediment from diverse knowledge and experiences. I've learned the importance of listening more than speaking, of keenly observing the subtext in human interactions, for it is there that true intentions and deepest feelings are revealed. Empathy, more than a skill, has become a way of being, a lens through which I can comprehend the motivations of others, even when they radically diverge from my own. Understanding that everyone carries their own history, with its joys and wounds, opens the door to compassion and tolerance, virtues essential for the cultivation of more genuine and meaningful relationships. The events that have shaped my journey have undoubtedly been the principal sculptors of my worldview. Whereas I once sought definitive answers and unshakable certainties, I now grasp that life's beauty lies in its fluidity, its constant mutation, and its capacity for adaptation. Excessive attachment to a fixed state or rigid opinion can ensnare us, impeding growth and the discovery of new horizons. Experiences, whether marked by sweetness or bitterness, act as compasses, guiding our future decisions, but it is crucial to remember that the map is not the territory. Each event, however impactful, is merely a chapter in a much larger narrative, and how we interpret and learn from it dictates the direction we subsequently take. I now understand that true learning resides in continuous reflection and the acceptance of impermanence. Mental rigidity is an impediment to progress. Conversely, an openness to new ideas and perspectives is what allows us to evolve. The house, in its apparent solidity, has become a symbol of this wisdom. Its deep foundations represent the lessons that underpin my being, while its open windows invite contemplation of the vast and ever-transforming external world. The simplicity with which I now approach challenges is the fruit of years of learning, of understanding that the past is a silent tutor whose teachings, when well absorbed, illuminate the path ahead. The solidity of the house, which once seemed to me a bulwark against the world, now reveals itself as a mirror of my own inner journey. Its foundations, deep and firm, echo the lessons that have shaped me, the patient and at times painful learning that has sustained my existence. The wrinkles that mark its walls, much like my own, tell stories of harsh winters and radiant springs, of times of plenty and of scarcity, of intense joys and profound sorrows. Each brick, each beam, is a silent testament that adversity, far from being an insurmountable obstacle, is often the forge where character is tempered, where true strength is honed. The windows, always open to the horizon, are no longer mere openings to the landscape, but portals to an understanding of life's infinite complexity. Through them, I observe the ceaseless rhythm of time, the subtle shifts in the seasons, the unfolding of generations. This broadened perspective, gained over the years, has taught me to cherish impermanence, to embrace the fluidity of all things. The past, once perceived as an anchor tethering me, has transformed into a precious map, whose routes and detours guide me with wisdom, not to repeat errors, but to tread with greater discernment the paths that still lie ahead. The wisdom that now resides within me is not knowledge accumulated in books, but rather a feeling etched into my soul, a visceral comprehension of life's cycle. I have learned that resilience is not the absence of falls, but the capacity to rise after each stumble, with strength renewed by experience. Empathy, in turn, has blossomed as I have witnessed the silent battles each human being wages within themselves. Understanding that everyone carries their own wounds and their own hopes has taught me to look at others with greater compassion and less judgment. The events that have punctuated my existence, from the simplest joys to the most devastating losses, have indelibly shaped my worldview. If I once sought definitive answers, today I delight in the beauty of questions that remain open-ended. I have learned that the pursuit of knowledge is an unending journey, and that true wisdom lies in the humility of recognizing how much there still is to learn. Life, in its essence, is a constant invitation to evolution, a delicate dance between what we were, what we are, and what we can yet become, always with the serenity of one who knows that every step, however small, contributes to the beauty of the path traversed. The wrinkles adorning my face today are maps, each furrow a recollection of a valley traversed or a mountain scaled. I look back and witness the weaver of time toiling ceaselessly, intertwining threads of joy and sorrow, of encounters and farewells, fashioning the tapestry that is my existence. The young woman I once was, with her impetuous dreams and the childlike certainty of possessing all the answers, could scarcely have fathomed the path that would unfurl before her. Every challenge, every misstep, were not detours, but rather creative diversions that guided me to unexpected vistas, to learnings I would never have acquired whilst ensconced in my comfort zone. However, the most profound transformation resides not in external experiences, but in the inner stillness these encounters have taught me to nurture. The yearning to conquer the world has yielded to a deep gratitude for the quotidian's minute marvels, the aroma of morning coffee, a grandchild's laughter, the serenity of a sunset. I have discovered that true wealth lies not in the accumulation of material possessions, but in the abundance of affection, the depth of human connections, and the peace of mind that stems from acceptance. I have learned to dance with uncertainty, to find beauty in imperfection, and to embrace the transience of all that exists. This journey has impressed upon me that life is not a destination to be reached, but a continuous process of flourishing. Like a seed unfurling in the earth, each of us carries the potential to expand and transform, irrespective of the seasons that present themselves. The wisdom I impart, therefore, is not a magic formula, but an invitation to introspection. I invite you to gaze upon your own narrative, to unravel the threads that compose it, and to recognize the transformative power of your lived experiences. Allow yourself to be shaped by life, receive its lessons with humility, and find beauty in the journey, for it is in the voyage, with all its nuances, that the true essence of who we become resides. Embrace this dance, for in each step, however unassuming it may seem, you are weaving the masterpiece that is your own life.